back inside the Now Morning Show. We are broadcasting to you live from Tobago this morning as we get ready for the Tobago House of Assembly elections happening this Monday. Raucous hands, and this morning joining us, the President of the Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Ms. Diane Hadad. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Good morning, Raucous and hands. Good morning, Tobago.
Yes.
And may I say welcome to you all. Maybe we should have elections every month so that we can get one show in Tobago live with such a beautiful scenery.
It is a beautiful scenery, and you know what? I would encourage you to continue to advocate for us to come back here as often as possible.
It probably has a few perks.
A few perks, just a few, just
well,
a few.
Once the businesses and the industry in Tobago allows and supports of us coming here, we'll most definitely be here.
Oh my God, what a cycle you get into.
It all goes hand in hand.
Then we have to speak of making money in order to have some profitability to put
And
into that type of support.
This is exactly what we're going to
where
talk
the conversation needs to go, because I'm curious as to, representing the Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, what do you guys want to see coming out of the election? If there was a change in government, if we continue with the same government, what are some of the changes that you guys need to be able to assist in profitability, to be able to assist in generating income?
Well, let us say that there are a couple of things that need to get back to the table.
Right.
Be it the existing, well, there's nobody now, but whether it's the PNM or the PDP or the IDA, whoever gets into power, there are several things that have been on the table for a number of years that need to just go back to the drawing board and be readdressed. Right. And the first one really would be that we decide as an island about the Land License Act, which needs to be removed. It needs to be removed so that we can send a message very clearly that we are about investment and developing our economy. I think that's the first message that needs to be sent. Right. Whilst we are doing that, we also need to develop the business community of Tobago by bringing them into real standards of how do we conduct business. And that means that they must have opportunities. So rather than them all, whoever benefits from the THA, they just continuously, that formula of you just have a contract from the THA and that's your income.
Right.
And if somebody is mad with you, you don't get any income and so you're starved. And that cannot be what business is. And in fact, I want to say from my perspective, that is not business. That is totally more or less into some kind of, because many people's businesses don't have another formula to it. That's the formula.
The formula is just get a contract from THA.
And that's it. That's what is business. That's not business.
Right.
And therefore, it doesn't take out the real creative juices in us. It doesn't allow us to really, like now, the times we're going through, where's the entrepreneurial skill, that dance, that gut, that how do I maneuver through this? How am I, only yesterday, a friend of mine said to me, because I was speaking to him, and I said, maybe I can help you in this. And he says, oh my God, don't you stop? I said, why? He said, you are always thinking of how next to come out of wherever we are.
Right.
And I'm saying that's the true gut in it. That's the true belly in it. That's where the entrepreneur is. And I always say that entrepreneurs were not made. They are born. And they are born because it's something in you that gets up and kicks all the time. It is not that you are sitting and waiting. Yeah. Those people don't ever sit in waiting. And
so with that statement, do you think that the entrepreneurial spirit in Tobago can be molded?
Yes, but we have to start, and let me say this is not just for Tobago. This point I'm going to make is for Trinidad and Tobago. Our education system needs to get really deep. Our education system has really failed us.
Right.
And so we are just teaching our children to come through now and get certificates, get a piece of paper, and after that, get another piece of paper. And after that, get another piece of, and once you have those papers, you are now entitled to. It doesn't put any other aspect of the human being's development. It's academia, paper, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's not what development of a human being is.
So here's where the question comes in. The question comes in where we need to find out, has the private sector done enough to assist in molding this entrepreneurial spirit?
Well, the private sector, I need us to, this may sound gruff or blunt, but the private sector is private sector. We need to understand our roles. Governments are facilitators of ensuring that private sector develops and their people benefit as a country.
Well, what is the role of the private sector then in the economy and in society?
Private sector, from where I see it, and the body that I represent in terms of how we discuss things, comes from a place where private sector is to reinvest in a meaningful way to the development of our human capital. That's for me where it needs to go. Because when you invest in private sector, your assets are your people. Besides your product and your property, your assets, one of them are your people. And to me, private sector needs to channel their corporate social responsibility back into the human element. So if you develop this important asset, then we won't have a problem as to whether we have retention, continuation, that type of thing. And then government does not become so powerful in terms of control over the development of your people, because a stifled people keeps a dumb government in power.
So what
I'm curious about something, because we keep talking about reinvestment and stuff like that. Just now when we were speaking with Tobago CivilNet, one of the things they mentioned was investing into the private sector. And then you said at the beginning of this conversation, you said that the THC, people have contracts with the THC, and that's how they get their business, and that's their business model. What does investment from the government look like for the private sector? What does that actually look like, if not THA contracts?
You mean now?
No. What should it look like?
Oh, well, investment from the government, I don't know what investment from the government means. I don't know that government
investing in the private sector.
No, that's unless you're going into a venture capital or things like that. But our country has too much mistrust. Our country has too much mistrust. We need to be real about that. Our country does not have the trust of the monies or funding is going to be given to the right individuals who will actually make it work. And so other persons sitting on the outside, seeing all these failed entities and failed investments, tends to say, but you're wasting taxpayers' dollars. So we have to understand that trust for me is out the window. And because it's out the window, we need to get to a place where equality and fairness seems to be the order of the day and is seen and acted out. And therefore, the funding goes to persons who you know will genuinely deliver. And after that delivery, remember, there's the reinvestment.
But how do we decide who will be able to deliver? Because as someone in business, you would agree that a lot of times business ventures fail, and the ones that fail eventually lead to the success. So how do we decide?
There are different aspects of proposals that come in, and people make, and I know things go wrong. I myself have made investments and commitments with persons who walked out on me after you did it, right?
And I'm sure you would have gone through the proper vetting and everything to make sure that you were making the right choice.
But you know what was sad? It came down to race. It had nothing to do with, it came down to race. That persons were promoting to the person, don't do it because of color. That's where the sadness comes in, okay? Now, it didn't mean the talent wasn't there. It didn't mean that all the other aspects were not there. I had already dealt with all of that in terms of interviews and whatever as to why you choose this person. But it came down to color. That's a sad place to be.
It is.
Right. So, but that's real. Okay? So, if it is, we are speaking of government investment, government needs to ensure that there are the financial supporting systems that when persons go into that space, they can negotiate properly to get proper financial support and advice. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Because if you can't nurture the idea and deliver, then really and truly, you're not worthy of funding. But you must have some level of, so you may have something that you start off with and you have a successful formula now. And you may start making, let's say, socks. And you may be the best socks man. But it doesn't mean that you can go and make shoes because you're not a cobbler. Right? So we need to understand that in doing it, we need to help you develop from socks. You might actually make better undergarments. Right? But you may not be a cobbler. So there's no point in me telling you, Ruckus or Hans, go and be a cobbler. Yes, I'm signing off to you being a cobbler. And you don't have anything to do with that. One of the things we have noticed, for instance, I'm seeing it, we give a lot of small loans and grants and so on. It is the persons making food and so. But then there's also the copycat formula, which is you get it, it's working for you.
So somebody else tries to do the same
everybody
thing
else
and
just
wants
does
to do
it,
the
and
same thing.
therefore what
It's actually a Trinidad and Tobago problem.
Well, I am not surprised by any. And then we are filtered with this one thing that doesn't allow anybody to survive because...
Clutter market.
Yes,
so do we need more regulations in terms of things like that?
I don't know that you need regulations. I think what you need is that vetting needs to be a lot more vigorous in terms of whether the person, because sometimes you go and you buy the food and it doesn't even taste good in many of them, which means it was a copycat formula and it wasn't about whether this person had done successfully, you know, catering or whatever, or I do sell by the side of the road and now I need to establish myself better and so. And many of those things need to be addressed. We filter our country with vending all over the place. It's illegal vending. And we don't develop people to get into rental spots and paying taxes and that whole aspect of it.
Really contribute
so how does it contribute back to the economy? And then when somebody understands that I have a responsibility to pay this and to pay that, and I do my costings that way, that person, something different triggers here. It's totally different.
It's a different level of responsibility for the business owner.
But I'm curious about the current state of monitoring and evaluation, because, you know, you talk about these things that people get investments and they set up their business and things, but how do we currently monitor to make sure that after you invest in something that it's, whether, even if it fails, that you did the right things and maybe it just didn't work out for other reasons, like you mentioned before, be it race or be it whatever other reason?
Well, in our situation now, it wouldn't work out because you don't have the economies of scale in terms of the movement of the people to make anything generate profitably. That's the problem. So the people who are dependent, let us say, on the THA contracts, they might be survivors through something like this. Is that formula sustainable? No. The persons who are THA employed or government employed generally are the ones that are just sitting there benefiting even through this situation of a pandemic. They've written it out great. In fact, they are your best customers to the banking system now to lend money to. It's definitely not you or me. They're not going to see us as
potential clients, like we're not the ideal clients.
Viable.
Because we don't have this set salary that comes from a set base. And so you have those problems. But let me say that as a people, we really need to step up our game from the give-up perspective. We need to really understand that there's a bigger factor here. I know through the pandemic, I continue to support my staff from that perspective in a big way, letting them understand that we need to rise above this. So there's a spiritual connectivity that we need to find our way, because we seem to have lost that in many ways.
Well, talk to me about the culture of Tobagoans when it comes to work. Last night, I was paying attention to the conversations with the chief, and that was one of the things that kept coming up, is that, you know, the culture of work or lack thereof. Some people just want to get a THA work. They want to just get a work inside the THA and be good, whatever that meant to them.
What that meant to them, that is something that has been passed on, I want to say, from at least just the two last generations. That has been cultivated because it was a form of suppression and control. And maybe the minds that came up with it were very smart from that perspective. Now, very smart selfishly, not very wise, because that does not develop your human capital. And that in itself is a destruction of your country and the economy.
But people will argue that maybe it was meant to create employment in the first instance, and then along the way people got complacent with the employment.
No, there was nothing about creating employment. We had a bouncing tourism sector then. We actually, and I want to use the word export, but we exported foreign currency back to Trinidad head offices because of the type of interactions we had here with tourism.
You contributed.
Yes, and therefore, you don't keep that amount of US in your branches here, and therefore, or pound sterling or Dutch marks or whatever it is we had. We had all the foreign currencies you could have thought of here, and it will go back to our, of course, that becomes exchange and so on, then the availability. So we were doing very well there. So you can't tell me that was security of jobs, because people were very secure in their jobs then. At that stage, the dream was to own a lovely car and be a good taxi driver. That's what a lot of people...
Or to own a rental space.
To own a rental service,
Yeah.
to get into small bed and breakfast.
Right.
Those were the dreams then. So you can't tell me that that was security of jobs, that it was done in that.
Okay.
So then what was it then that created all those opportunities, that made so much? I mean, I think that THA employs the biggest percentage of Tobagonians.
Yes.
Well, I don't think you all are politicians as yet.
Not, I'm not planning to be one.
Okay.
No, no.
So, like all leaders aspiring to be or stay in power, they find mechanisms to take controls. And it's one of those that you use. That's a mechanism of control.
All right. Well, okay, let's move away from that a little bit. Ideally, what would you like to see, regardless of who is victorious in this election come Monday? What would you like to see for the business community and Tobago by extension?
I would like to see us get back to having the master plan for this island.
Right.
And starting at the beginning. Let us ignore what has happened and let us not blame. Let us just get up, sit at the serious table, and let us decide how we are going to fix the place. First, physically, area by area sort of thing.
Right.
The infrastructural changes that need to take place for your port-in facilities, airport-in facilities, that type of thing.
Right.
Let us get the island, because a lot of our infrastructure has been ignored for years in terms of what we need to be. Of course, this is going to need some central government clout and input because of the funding, or we need to develop some sort of arrangements where private partnerships can come in.
Right.
But we need to get, whether it's our marina going or whatever, we need to start to invite people back here. And we need to fix our communities because they're looking ugly in many ways. We've crossed the boundaries of tongue and country. We're not putting up things that are pleasing to the eye. We've broken all those rules. We have broken all those rules.
All right. Well, it seems that we have a lot to look forward to going forward, and I am interested to see what happens come Monday and how those changes will be implemented, if any at all. I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing a bit of your take on the situation. And we are coming to you guys live from right here at the Magdalena Grand Beach and Golf Resort. We're covering the THA elections as we lead up to it on Monday. Hands is here, Ruckus is here. I want to thank you so much, Diane, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
It's now in Tobago. We'll be right back.